I grew up in a small town where the biggest landmark was an overgrown cemetery that nobody visited unless they had to dot it sat just past the tree line on the edge of town, where the road crumbled into gravel and nature had started reclaiming everything. The place had been there for over 2 centuries. Some of the graves were so old that the inscriptions had faded entirely. No one talked about it. No one maintained it. It was just dot 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 there. A forgotten, unwanted piece of land with too many bones in the dirt. When I was 11, I rode my bike past it with some kids from school. One of them, Kyle, the kind of kid who dared you to eat worms, dared me to go inside. Bet. You won't walk to the oldest grave and knock on it. I said no, of course. I wasn't stupid. But that night, lying in bed, something bothered me. It wasn't Kyle. It wasn't the dare. It was the cemetery itself. The way it just sat there quiet and still, like it was watching dot years past. I moved out. Went to college. Got a job in the city. Rarely visited home. But 2 years ago, after my mother passed away, I had to return and settle her affairs. Her house, the one I grew up in, was only a 10-minute walk from that damn cemetery. The day I arrived, I found a letter taped to her fridge. It was addressed to me. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, but shaky, almost frantic. If you hear, it whisper your name. Do not answer. Keep walking. Always keep walking. I reread it 5 times. It made no sense. Mom never believed in ghosts or spirits or anything supernatural. She was a nurse, rational, logical. And now here I was, alone in her kitchen, holding a warning from beyond the grave about whispers. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house was too quiet. Every floorboard creaked like it was breathing. I stared at the ceiling until 2 a.m., then finally gave in to the gnawing thought that had followed me since I got back. Go to the cemetery. I slipped on my coat, grabbed a flashlight, and walked out into the misty night. The path through the woods was narrower than I remembered. Trees leaned in on both sides like they were whispering secrets to each other. When I reached the edge of the cemetery, the metal gate was still hanging on by one hinge. It groaned as I pushed it open. Gravestones tilted like crooked teeth. In the dim fog, some had toppled over entirely. And then I heard it at first. I thought it was the wind. A soft, rustling sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once, but then it grew sharper, more distinct. It wasn't wind, it was a voice. Faint, but unmistakable. Daniel ... I froze, my flashlight flickered. Daniel ... It was coming from the far end of the cemetery, where the ground dipped and the oldest grave stood. My heart began to pound. I turned and ran. The gate was gone. I swear gone. In its place. There was just more fence. Rusted shut, no sign of how. I had come in. I spun around, scanning with my flashlight, breathing hard. The mist thickened, curling around the graves like fingers. Daniel ... The voice was closer now. Female. Soft. Familiar. Mom. I whispered, without thinking. As soon as I said it, the temperature dropped. My breath came out in a white puff. I turned toward the voice, and there she was, standing between 2 tall headstones. Barefoot in the fog, wearing the pale blue nightgown she used to sleep in. My mother. She looked younger. No wrinkles. No signs of illness. But her eyes were ... wrong. Too black. Too wide. Too calm. She smiled. Tilted her head. Raised one hand and pointed downward toward an open grave behind her. I took a step back. Come, she said softly. It's time to come home. I stumbled, fell, dropped the flashlight. Darkness swallowed everything. I scrambled on my hands and knees until I found it again. But when I flicked it on, she was gone. Just headstones. Just dirt. But the open grave remained. I sprinted toward the fence, desperate to climb it, as I grabbed. The bars, they burned my hands ice, cold metal that felt alive under my grip. I screamed and then ... the voice again. Directly in my ear. Don't leave me again, Daniel. That wasn't my mother. That wasn't anyone I'd ever known. I turned and saw a shape climbing out of the open grave. Not a person. Something wearing a person. Its movements were jerky. Wrong. Like a puppet handled by broken strings. Its skin sagged in places. Dirt clung to it like a second layer. It smiled at me. My mother's smile, but wider. I blacked out. When I came to, it was morning. I was lying just outside the cemetery fence. Covered in mud. The gate was back in its place. Closed. Locked. I limped home and never spoke a word of what I saw to anyone. But now, months later, I'm writing this because the whispers have started again. At night. In my apartment. Far from home. Far from the cemetery. Double quotes. Daniel. Always just behind my ear. Always soft. Always waiting. And I know now that place didn't just whisper my name. It marked it. I didn't believe in curses until I took the job at the Eddington Cemetery. It was a temporary gig. I'd just left my job in the city after a rough breakup and was crashing at my uncle's place in the countryside. He knew the local groundskeeper who had gotten sick and needed someone to cover his night shifts for a couple weeks. It's easy, my uncle said. Just make sure no kids are messing around in there at night. Walk the perimeter once or twice. That's it. It sounded simple enough, and the money was decent. What he didn't tell me. What no one told me was that the last 3 night watchmen didn't exactly quit. They disappeared. Eddington Cemetery wasn't big, about 2 acres, surrounded by thick pine trees and barbed wire fence. There was a small shack at the front entrance with a space heater, coffee machine, and dusty logbooks dating back to the 1950s. On my first night, the place seemed peaceful. Cold, but peaceful. I did my rounds with a flashlight, checked the locks on the gates, sipped stale coffee, and listened to static-filled radio until the sun came up. I even thought this might be the easiest paycheck I ever made, but things changed by the 3rd night. That's when I met him. It was just after midnight. I was doing my 2nd round when I spotted movement between the headstones. A figure, tall and thin, wearing what looked like a long black coat. His back was to me, and he moved in slow, dragging steps like he was pushing through water. I froze. Sir? I called out, trying to sound calm. You're not supposed to be in here after dark. He didn't answer. I took a few steps closer, gripping my flashlight. That's when he turned his head, just his head all the way around, like an owl. No body movement. No turning. Just a smooth, slow pivot of the skull until it was facing me. And then he smiled. I dropped the flashlight. When I looked back up, he was gone. I searched for almost an hour, trying to convince myself it had been a shadow, a trick of the light, anything but what I'd actually seen. Eventually, I gave up and went back to the shack. But when I stepped inside, he was there. Sitting in my chair, hands folded, face pale as wax, eyes dark and hollow. I used to work here too. He said. His voice was flat, cold, like it came from somewhere else entirely. I backed out of the shack and ran straight into the woods. Didn't stop until I reached the main road and flagged down a trucker. I quit the next morning, but it didn't end there. Over the next week, I started dreaming about him. Always in the cemetery. Always walking between the same 5 graves, muttering something I couldn't hear. Then I got a call from the cemetery supervisor. We found something strange in the logbook you were using, he said. Your entries, they kept going, even after you left. He sent me photos. They were in my handwriting, dates after I'd quit. Same time every night. Just one line. Still here. Still watching. Still walking. I went back. I know. It sounds insane, but I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. When I arrived, the place looked the same. Same fence. Same shack. Same row of graves by the trees. But something had changed. The ground near those 5 graves, the ones from my dreams, had been disturbed. Freshly turned soil. No grass. No markers. I counted. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5. As I knelt to look closer, I saw something half buried in the dirt. A name tag. Mine. Still clipped to the jacket I'd worn during the job. Only I hadn't left it there. At least I don't remember leaving it there. That night, the dreams got worse. I saw the man again. Only this time, I could hear what he was saying over and over. It's your turn now. I moved back to the city, tried to forget, but some nights around midnight, I wake up to find mud on my shoes, even though I haven't left my apartment, even though the cemetery is 3 hours away. And sometimes when I look in the mirror, I don't recognize my own eyes. Because maybe I never really left. Maybe you don't quit that job. Maybe you just take your turn. When I bought the land, I had no idea there was a cemetery on it, thought it wasn't on the map. Wasn't mentioned in the deed. The realtor just said, some old farmland, been untouched for decades. I wanted quiet, a place to get away from people, noise, everything dot, so I bought it. 14 acres, dirt cheap. Probably because the nearest neighbor was 2 miles away, and the only road in was half gravel, half pothole. The first few weeks were peaceful. Birds, wind through the trees, the occasional deer crossing the path. But then I found the grave dot. It was a Sunday. I was clearing brush near the edge of the tree line when my foot hit something hard. I thought it was a buried rock until I dug it up and found a headstone. Flat, stone gray, half swallowed by dirt and moss. Elias K. Morton, 1879 to 1902. Laid to rest in silence. I stared at it for a long time. Why was there a grave here? Was this an old family plot? A forgotten burial ground? I did some research that night. Asked around at the local library, nothing, no record of the cemetery, no record of Elias Morton. I figured it was just one lonely grave. Maybe an unmarked resting place no one wanted to deal with dot, so I cleared the brush around it. Set up a small wooden fence out of respect. But that's when things started going wrong. The next morning, the grave was open. A clean rectangular hole in the dirt 6 feet deep no sign of how it was dug. No shovel marks. No displaced earth nearby just open my stomach turned. Had someone been watching me? Waiting for me to discover it? Playing a prank? I called the sheriff. He came, looked at it, shrugged. Probably some local kids. Or animals. Then he filled out a half-hearted report and left. I refilled the grave myself. That night, I locked the doors and windows left the lights on. Still, I had nightmares of something crawling out of the hole, something smiling without a face by the end of the week. The grave had opened 3 more times always at night. Always perfectly cut no footprints. No tools. And something else. Each time it reopened. The headstone was just a little different dot first. The name got clearer. Then a second name appeared underneath. Emily. J. Morton, 1880 to 1902. Together again beneath the soil. That name hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. I tried ignoring it. But at night, I started hearing noises outside. Shuffling. Breathing. Sometimes a faint scratch on the porch like nails on wood I stopped sleeping started, keeping a bat by my bed. Then, around 3 a.m. one night, I heard a knock at my door, 3 slow knocks. I didn't move. Then, knock, then knock. Held my breath. Then a voice. Soft, delicate. Let me in. It's so cold. I peeked through the curtain. There was a woman standing on the porch wearing a pale dress. Hair soaked, hanging in clumps. Her feet were bare, muddy. Her face was turned away. I whispered, Emily. She turned her face was smooth. Too smooth, like clay that had been erased. Then she smiled. I don't remember what happened next. I woke up the next morning in my bed. Front door, wide open, bat still on the nightstand. But when I went to the grave, it was closed again. Both names now clearly. Carved. And fresh flowers laid on top I hadn't put them there. That day, I packed up and left. Sold the land for half what I paid. Didn't care. I just wanted out. But now, months later, things are happening again. The other night, I heard something in my apartment hallway. I opened the door and found a flower. The same kind that had been left on the grave. And last night, I woke up with mud. On my sheets, I haven't told anyone. Who would believe me? But every night, I wake up at 3 a.m. Always the same dream. A grave, a whisper, a smile, and a hand reaching out of the dirt, for me.